So we are ready to start our first Expert Insights panel for this summit event. And I'm very pleased to be joined here on stage by Mathilde Thy-Kveborg and Tanja Jensen. You are medical writers at AXA Group. I think we should give them a warm hand. And so the theme of this discussion will be then optimizing your chances of approval, how to achieve effective clinical and regulatory documents and overcome known obstacles, and not least save money and time. I think that's something that should interest quite a few people in the room these days. So just a short backdrop then. Mathilde and Tanja, you have promised to enlighten us and with your knowledge about regulatory documents, share the best tips you have for how to achieve effective regulatory documents, and hopefully that will lead to approvals that all the companies here are striving for. I'd like to ask you first, Mathilde, can you explain a little bit more what it is that you do, and why is that relevant to the audience here today?
Sure. So the medical writer role is quite broad, with the key responsibility to design and deliver fit-for-purpose documents that communicate often very complex information in a clear and concise and unambiguous way. We work with many different types of documents. The typical regulatory ones would be a protocol for a clinical study report, investigators' brochures. We also do quite a few scientific publications, and then we sometimes also help with marketing material or SOP writing. We all have a scientific background, so the far majority have PhDs and some also postdocs. And then in addition to the scientific foundation we stand on, we have spent quite a few years gaining insights into what effective communication is when it comes to drug development. And this means that we have some tricks up our sleeve that can help accelerate clinical development by optimizing the regulatory documents that we send to the authorities.
So it's not just about having great science, you also have to be able to communicate that science.
Exactly.
So, but many people in this room and in the life science community, they know how to write. It's part of their degrees, you could say. You claim to be able to optimize the chances of approval and by saving time and money. So what can you offer that's different from what the other people already know?
Okay, so I'll start in more general terms. So it's about unfolding the story that emerges from the data. This is not something we do alone. We do that in a cross-functional team of experts representing various skill areas. But the medical writer role is then to help build the stories so that it comes out as a clear, with messaging, explaining how the different pieces of information tie together. And with that can help guide through the sponsor's flow of thought, mapping out how they then arrived at their conclusions. So with the medical writer on board, it's possible to produce documents that are both compliant and concise, but also that help aid the reader's understanding and interpretation of the data.
Yeah.
And when we talk about approval, are we talking about market approval, the finishing line, so to speak, or can you elaborate?
Well, that it is part. Not only it's part of the marketing approval as well, but it's also about clinical development program. You want that approved. And you also have other documents that you're going to submit along the clinical development that you're going to approve. So it's about that, but it's also about knowing the audience that you need. Especially there are two parts where you want to know. One part is behavioral science and neuroscience, so you understand the brain and how it searches for information. So all of you are busy and have busy days and have a demanding job, and so does the reviewers. So it's about knowing how to set up the document to ease their way of reading, because they skim through the document. They don't read it from top to bottom, and especially not in a chronological order. They get a big report and they search for answers, so they read for decision making.
And to follow up on that, I think it's very interesting because we know that they are skim readers. We know from eye scan recordings how a skim reader moves through a document. So with that, we can actively place the key messages in the position that receive most attention. So, and that's obviously something that can be used to the sponsor's strategic advantage, but it's also something that the regulators want us to do because it saves them time. It allows them to find the answers they need in order to then be able to grant the approval that we desire.
I'm learning a lot of new stuff here. I was under the impression that writing is more about talent, but obviously it's more science to it than I realized. I should also say that feel free in the audience to use the question app. You can find the QR code on page 3, and to write in any questions you might have for Tanja and Mathilde. So, speaking of then how to structure the information and so on, make it facilitated for the target group, basically. There are guidelines, regulatory guidelines, quite clear on what all these documents, if it's a protocol or whatever it is, should contain. So can't you just follow these guidelines and be home safe?
So regulatory guidelines are key, no doubt about that. But one thing is following those, that does require quite a bit of experience and also a deep understanding. Then it's important to keep in mind that most of what regulatory bodies issue are actually guidelines. They're not a strict set of rules that need to be followed. So it's really important to understand when it's appropriate to deviate from these and when it's absolutely not. And that's the regulatory component. Then there is also a very important component related to how data is presented. There is a survey from the American Medical Writers Association. They have asked a panel of regulators. These regulators have, on average, I think 10 years of experience. They spent the far majority of their working time reviewing regulatory documents. And when asked, 90% of these regulators say that they experience being unable to perform regulatory review due to the quality of the documents they receive. So if you let that sink in a little bit, 9 out of 10 of the regulators are unable to do their job because the scientific community is not able to deliver the documents that fit the purpose. So with that, it's so crucial to understand what are these barriers then and how can they be overcome.
Yeah. So 9 out of 10, that rings a bell. I hope it doesn't correlate with how many projects are successful in the end. But obviously, being expert at this, what's the secret sauce, if you will? What are the most commonly known problems, and how should you overcome them?
Well, there are a number of factors that contribute. Poor explanation of rationale, excessive length, incomplete content. These are the key factors and most frequently reported in the study that Mathilde mentioned, where 9 of 10 reviewers can't do their job. And it's also the one with the greatest impact on the quality. And the medical writer, we know about this and we know what to do, and we can overcome these quality issues and prepare a high quality document. And we have some very, based on a long-term experience, we know what to do and how to do it. Have our tricks and tips.
So just a spontaneous thought is that there are quite a few early companies here. At what stage should you engage your type of expertise? Is it as early as possible, or is it at certain stages?
I would say very early, because you need to consider the writing in downstream documents as well. So if you have the full strategy, a medical writer would know, okay, this piece of information ties in with some downstream documents where you have to address questions. So for example, in a protocol, there are specific items you want to include because you know there are questions about that in a clinical trial report. Or for a publication, perhaps, that there are checklists, not only the author guidelines, but checklists as well for clinical trials that we know that this should be covered if you want to publish in a high-impact journal.
So I realize I'm deviating a little bit from the script here, but I can imagine then that you have encountered projects when you come in and you have some previous, content to look at, and how often do you look into it and see that, oh my God, this is not very good?
It happens. It happens. It depends on the experience of the company, how much they've been working on it. And also, for matter of efficiency, we try to align the information across documents and reuse text and reuse models. And that's also a way to be consistent, because inconsistency is a flag for regulators. And also inconsistency in a document is, a reader might think, okay, are you talking about 3 different things here? You use a different terminology. So that's things that we are very picky about to make clearer in a document. And also how you navigate through a document could be made easier, because it's a thick report and reviewers don't have much time, so they need to skim through it and find cues and signs to address their questions.
So consistency and clarity are key.
Yep.
So imagine then someone in the audience are about to embark on this journey of writing a protocol, for example. What are the most important things to consider then, if they are, at the beginning?
Yeah, and so the protocol, that's a tool for navigating and understanding a clinical trial, and there are a lot of stakeholders involved. And one of them are the investigators. They spend maybe 5 or 10 minutes before they meet a subject that's in the trial. So they have to quickly sift through the protocol to understand, okay, what is it that we should do with this patient today? And when you build or design the protocol, you take that into consideration. And it's actually similar to IKEA.
How so?
IKEA has this, all the stores are the same, and we have templates which are the same. You can vary between them, but ideally you have the same template, so the investigator recognizes from company to company where the information is. And then at the entrance of IKEA, there's a map, a very clear overview of what you're going to expect when you come into the store. There's a trail guiding you through every department of the store, optimizing IKEA's profit, probably. And then they have this story they tell with clear patterns of the rooms and signs. So for a protocol, the analogy here is, what the audience to take home is some steps. S, T, P, P, S, S. So S is for structure. You want a clear structure in your document, and you can do this. I typically add some extra headings, heading levels, which are very descriptive, because that's a way to manage the reader's expectation. Where can I find the answer to my questions? Oh, it seems to be here, and then they read it and they found it. T is for trail. It's a logical trail. We build blocks of messages that tie into each other and unfold a story. P is for pattern. You want to establish a pattern. In a protocol, in the trial design, it could be what should be assessed, when should it be done, and where. In a clinical trial report, we always start with the main message up front. We justify that message, and then we substantiate it with the science. And then this builds trust with the reader, because they recognize the pattern, and then they know they can go through the entire document finding the information very quickly to address what they're going to do. So it's structure, trail, pattern. Next S is for story. We unfold a story, sharing, building up with these blocks the full picture, and there's no piece missing, so you get what it is. And in a clinical trial report and not a protocol, you have a data set that tells a story. So the medical writer provides the trends and the main strokes. It's not a data dump where you just provide a thick appendix with all the tabulations and say, go fetch to the reviewer. We provide them with the information because they're busy people and their brains are lazy. They want to have the information served. And the last S is for science, visual science. So use a lot of tables, figures, flowcharts, bullet points, descriptive headings, cross-references to signal this is important, take a look at this, and then also make it available for skim reading. So the steps is a way of building the design, and then there's logical or practical things as well. Now I talk a lot, but I want to tell these two things as well. It's about strategy, a long-term strategy, and the stakeholders. So the long-term strategy is understanding that there are downstream documents that you need to consider for what you're preparing in the protocol, and bear that in mind. What answers should I answer later, and what is my end goal, my indication, or the device? And the stakeholders is about the medical writer. They facilitate a lot of discussions, and they pick their stakeholders' brain to put that into the protocol. And they have their own language, so there's a lot of inconsistencies that just bound to happen. And that's also where we come in to ensure that we are speaking the same language, we use the same terminology, as everybody's on the same page for a good protocol, and then patient safety and trial integrity will just rise.
So I kind of like the analogy with IKEA, because then at least it used to be that you could go there, save time and save some money. And that's something that you claim that you will be able to do for the companies. And I'm pretty sure that quite a few investors are interested in that aspect as well, seeing as capital is scarce nowadays, and we need to, preserve your runway and so on. So how would you say that you concretely then help the companies save money? Because I guess you also cost money.
I can elaborate on that. So I'm sure that everyone in this room can appreciate that when it comes to drug development, time equals money. And coming back to the survey I referenced earlier, the regulators expressed that 80% of the applications that are ultimately approved, so the ones that contain everything they need in order to obtain an approval, 80% of these are delayed due to issues that can be directly attributed to poor document quality. So by following Tanya's advice, you could frankly say that then these 80% would have been approved straight away. Then this relates to things that go on during regulatory review, but it's also very much the case during trial conduct. So you asked how often we see protocols, for example, that don't quite meet the standards. As head of department, I receive quite a few requests for proposals in our company. And it's very often that I see these protocols where it's so easy to map out what needs to be done and how this would be much more efficient. And
if you have the experience as we do. Yeah.
Yes,
so
yes with the experience and with the understanding of what it needs to be used for at the investigator's site. He needs to use it as a lexicon, as a document he can look into and easy to, as Tanya alluded to, easy to navigate, find the exact information he needs. And when that's not in place, then we often see it leading to inconsistencies in the procedures that are performed at the trial site and also in the data that's collected, ending up with a poor data quality. Then what we also often see is that then when a clinical study is ongoing and the protocol isn't quite clear on what needs to be done, the sponsor realizes that we need to update the protocol. That's what we call a protocol amendment. And these are very large drivers of cost during clinical development. So having a clearer starting protocol can lead to fewer protocol amendments, thereby saving time.
And the amendments cause a delay as well.
Yes.
And in Europe, with the new guidelines, it's quite complex to navigate through and ensure that you can just create the amendment as well. So that's also part of it.
For sure, for sure. And then the last piece I just wanted to cover is that that I alluded to in the beginning, time equals money when it comes to drug development. So once you are close to a marketing authorization application, every day counts. So, and we know that some drugs bring in revenue worth of hundreds of millions euros every quarter. So what we in drug development would characterize as a slight delay of a couple of months maybe is a substantial lost income for a company. So I hope that answered the question about the time and money aspect.
And I'm pretty sure that investors appreciate if you don't lose time as well. So now we're talking about protocols and study protocols and so on, study design. Do these principles then of communication that you have laid out here, do they apply to other things, regulatory documents? So if you're writing a scientific publication or a grant, if you're applying for a grant, for example, does it work as well?
Yep. No, well, yes, it does, because all regulatory documents and all, I would stretch and say all documents benefit from having a good structure and having a quick way of navigating your way around them and understanding them. Because people who read them, they make decisions based on them. They're made for decision making. So I would say the same principles apply for the documents, even if you might modify them, but overall the same principles would apply.
I can give an example. So we were approached by a client. It's a Danish client called AJ Vaccines. And they have had conducted their last study in their development program and asked us to write up their scientific publication. You asked for an example on that. And because we are so familiar with writing clearly and concisely, following the applicable guidelines, we could lay out a very solid submission strategy leading to a first round approval. This is extremely rare. You may know that, those of you who have written scientific publications, this is extremely rare. So there were no comments from the journal editor, no comments from the journal reviewer, and it was approved in 3.5 weeks. Usually when you submit a scientific publication, the standard timeline until acceptance is 17 weeks. It goes through multiple rounds of review with substantial modifications being needed. Often we also see a need to change target journal, leading to additional modifications because there are the new author guidelines with the new journal you need to follow. So by our expertise in identifying the right journal and meeting the journal standards, we could save this client substantial time and also money in the end.
Well, that's great. I can also imagine that if you submit your protocol or your documents with the correct structure, and you become the reviewer's favorite student, so to speak, not end up at the bottom of the pile. We actually have a few questions from the audience, but I was going to ask you first to sort of sum up what would be the most important key takeaways for the audience here from you today.
Want to go first?
Yep. I think the analogy with IKEA is a good one that will help you remember the steps that I panned out. So it's structure, trail, pattern, story, and signals. So if you remember how to use these things, then you've come a long way.
Yes, and mine would be that following these principles and delivering efficient regulatory documents is an often overlooked but key avenue to securing success in your clinical development program. So I hope that you, those of you who do work with drug development, can use these tips to help accelerate your development programs.
Thank you very much. And you should also mention that since this session is being recorded, we will publish it after the event, and then you can all go back and review and sort of remember what was said here, because it's a lot of information to take in. So
I can add, we also we have a booth outside also with a written up paper if you prefer a paper version to it.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So, and they can come over in the break also to just pick your brains.
Yes.
Yeah, great. So we have a few questions, and I think I'm going to start out with the perhaps most pointed one. So brace yourselves. How does ChatGPT affect your business?
I think that's really interesting because ChatGPT can help us prepare a first draft to a big extent if we understand which questions we should ask and which prompts to use. So that can be helpful, but what it can't do yet is to analyze the data. It can't make any interpretations, it can't draw any conclusions. So the medical writer would have to do that, but we get a lot of help along the way to have some draft text that we can use. And also, as I said, we reuse text. And if you can get ChatGPT to have these modules of text and populate different sections, then we don't have to spend time on copy-pasting a lot of text and then start writing. We can just dive into the cognitive work and start interpreting, analyzing, and unfolding the story. So it's going to be very helpful.
So then I need to ask, because related to that is of course the issue of privacy of data and the value, I mean IP and so on.
Confidentiality.
So how if you enter data into ChatGPT, then it's out there.
Yep.
So how can you sort of make sure that you don't compromise any?
Some companies have their own ChatGPT, so it's confided in within the walls of the company, just as every other document is. But that's a big security issue to not put data in there that could compromise confidentiality.
Yes, cool. Okay, let's see more. Yes, what are the most common mistakes made in drug development communication? If you could perhaps outline a few of them shortly, briefly.
So I can name a few of what I observe. I often see a lack of consistency in documents, and I think that's unappreciated, the impact of writing with consistency. Because if you use different terms, I had a protocol in my department that we were working on. There were 9 different ways of mentioning the trial product that they use. And 9 different ways, and this is not a bad protocol, a bad sponsor. It's just because there are multiple authors and people don't quite appreciate that when you then have different terms, that signal differences to the brain. So in the end, an end user like an investigator may be wondering, is it the same thing or is it 2 different things when they write it different ways? So I think that consistency is something that is often unappreciated. And speaking now of ChatGPT, that's next generation, something that we already use a lot is our tools to enable consistency. So checkers that are add-ins to Microsoft Word that can help us identify these inconsistencies so that it can be alleviated in a matter of hours rather than. And then your second question was related to, there was the consistency part, and then there is the understanding what actually needs to go in which section. I often find extremely lengthy scientific introductions in a protocol where, according to ICH, a protocol introduction should be giving a rationale for the study and focus on risks and benefits for the patients. And then the rest can go to the IB. That'll give the sponsor a much better document, or the investigator a much better document to work with.
So
That was all, sorry.
No, so could you say that there are no actual points in writing longer rather than shorter?
No, that was also one of the AMVA, the survey that we talked about, that they said it's excessive length, it's too wordy. So there's the signal to noise that you need to consider what information should you share and not the rest.
So we are actually running out of time, but I would like to relay one final question. It's fairly concrete. Do you also work with EFSA applications?
Yes. Short answer is yes.
Short answer is yes.
Yes.
And I'm pretty sure that if anyone has any other queries regarding what you can help out with, you'll be happy to answer them then in the breaks, and you are going to be here for 2 days. Thank you very much for coming and enlightening us.
Thank you very much
Thanks
for having us.
Pleasure.
And with that, I'm going to return the word and the stage back to our next moderator, Michael, who will present the upcoming presenter for you. Thank you very much for listening.
Well, after that very interesting discussion, we can go back to our company presentations. And before we do that, I'd like to remind you that if you have any questions, you can go to the booklet here, our program, and on page 3, you'll find a QR code where you just take a picture of it, and you can submit your questions there. Or feel free to reach out to colleagues Kim and Felix if they have the microphones. So I'd like to welcome up to the stage Eric Frick, CEO of PainDrainer. Welcome, Eric.
Thank you. Thank you so much. First, when we think about PainDrainer, I'd like you to imagine a person living with chronic pain. We can call her Emma. She has quite heavy pain on Monday some weeks, and sometimes on Thursday, and sometimes the whole week altogether. What this means is that she is occasionally unable to work, she can't train, and she can't get a social life that she wants to have. So basically, she lowers her quality of life. And what is really troublesome is that she don't really know what factors that are the triggers for her pain for a specific day. Then, imagine this. She is not alone. She is one individual of a population of 190 million individuals in the US and Europe alone. So this is really a large population of people living with chronic pain. Yet, the access to pain physician is quite low. And the persons that do, in fact, meet the pain physician, normally the treatment path is opiates of various sort. This means that for the cost of the society in general, it's large, to not say enormous. We talk about $900 billion US annually in cost for the societal cost for people living with chronic pain. This needs to be addressed in some way, both from the society in general, but also from company working within the life science space. And that is where PainDrainer comes into play. We have developed a platform for chronic condition, where chronic pain is the first product to go live. Basically, it's a twofold product. We have a patient interface, which we will come back to, and then we have a clinician interface. And we can, with our product, enable pain physician to understand and give guidance on patients and how their clinical efficiency work for the treatment plan they are offered. They can also see how much their different type of opiates work and how they can actually lower them to use other means of methods to aid the patients. The product in itself is reimbursable through CPT codes in the US, meaning that we have access to a really large market. For a patient, we have a mobile application that is structured as a medical device that has a unique 360-degree patient-centric solution. And what this means is that we use an artificial neural network where we collect data, but we don't use population data. And this is quite important. I will get back to that. So what we do first is that we collect patient-specific input. And this could be, for example, if you train, if you do go to work, if you exercise, if you do household chores, and we log how much time, the experience of it, or the satisfactory level, and the intensity level. We also log the daily pain for the patient. All this data is then bundled into the neural network, where we process it and understand what are your specific trigger points that can be adapted, where you can give recommendation to then adapt your daily life. And this is the patient-specific output. And why is the 360 degrees important? Well, if we wouldn't use that and would use population data to say you are part of this bucket of population, that means that the subjectal approach to pain, meaning that I have a feeling of my pain that might not be the same as yours, would blur the image of your specific recommendation. So that's why it's really important to build a network that doesn't use population data. As mentioned, we are a medical device, and this is also really important because the wellness space for pain is quite crowded. But the medical device space is not that crowded, and also there's a big distinction in how you develop a product that is a medical device rather than a wellness product. So this means that we have a certification in place to be eligible to sell in the relevant market for us, and we also have a product that is the effect of a number of clinical trials. The latest clinical trials we conducted was with Weill Cornell and Newton Wellesley Medicine, or hospital, and that was published in Pain Medicine in the US earlier this year. And the results were quite remarkable. And I won't go through all of them here, but just to give some view of what we actually were able to aid the patient with. It's important to state that this is patients that have been living with pain for some of them 1 year, others up to 10, 15 years. And over a 12-week period program, we were able to reduce the pain interference and increase physical function in 3 out of 4 patients by utilizing the daily recommendation for the patients with PainDrainer. We also were able to increase the activity engagement, and over a longer period, actually increase the ability for these patients to get back to work. And if you remember, we talked about societal cost. And if you are able to get back to work, that reduces societal cost quite a lot. So the result here, quite remarkable. This means that we right now stand on the stepping stone to go out and sell this product. And we will use a licensing model where we offer this product to healthcare providers with both the patient interface and the clinician interface. And we have a payment structure where we bill for the active patient on the platform. And this means that we can forecast monthly recurring revenue of around $45 per patient per month. The company is backed by a highly competent and skilled team with various knowledge, both within medical device, life science, as well as within AI and neural network. And also more importantly, or perhaps most importantly, we have experience through the team and the board on how to launch remote monitoring products within the US, which is really core for us since that is our core market moving forward. 2023 has been a hectic and really good year for us, and I won't present everything that we have conducted so far, but some milestones that I think are really important for us and also perhaps for you is the FDA registration as a medical device class 1, because this means that we are eligible to bill for the CPT codes within the Medicare system. We were also awarded the most innovative digital health app in the Nordics by Nordic Innovation, and also won the Business Catalyst Sweden Scale-Up program as the most innovative and promising companies for international rollout. So what does this mean when we move forward? Well, this year we start to commence sales. We have our discussion with the first clinics, we do our first pilot and trials, and we do a seed round of capital to move to the next Series A round. And over a 5-year period, we see that we will be able to achieve sales of a bit over 200 million, and we will have around 60 clinics signed in our relevant market, which is primarily Sweden and US, and then in addition, a launch in Germany and potentially also in the UK. And we have chosen these countries due to the fact that they like digital product and they are quite strong on remote monitoring. For now, for this year, we are conducting a bridge financing round of 5 million SEK, and this is to be able to initiate the commercial phase to get those first pilot case, those first clinics, and see the traction of those, to then be able to go out in 2024 to do a full Series A round that will enable us to get the larger footprint in the US and also start to get the footprint in Germany for a more scalable sale. So basically, we want to secure key competence in the US, so we know that we have the right partners and the right distributors to sell. We want to look at the German market to see how we can place our product within the DIGA portal, and we want to further strengthen the clinical evidence of the product with new clinical trials that will enable us to get more certification of the complexity and variables that we product offer. The round is more or less filled, but there are still some ability to be part of this journey. And I would say that if you do want to be part of a journey that could bring a market for millions of people, you would like to be part of a journey that has a unique AI tool to aid chronic pain patient without further from the opiate space, and you want to see how we can utilize aid for the millions of people living with pain, then PainDrainer might be an investment for you. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much, Eric.
Thank you.
Well, jumping straight into the questions here, how do you evaluate the placebo effect?
Well, that's quite interesting. And when we've seen from the clinical trials, they were over 12 weeks, and we did one survey after 6 weeks to see how the patient reacted. And we can see there is a difference, a slight negative difference between the week 6 and week 12 for some parameters, which we believe are that in the initial feeling of the product, where you understand your pain, and you think you have a good sort of basic behavior, and that will trigger the placebo. But then after a couple of weeks, that will lower it again. So we think that given that you use it over time, the placebo will vanish, and the effect will be as the 12-week effect measured will be prolonged, so to say.
All right. And in terms of compatibility of the app, someone is asking, is it compatible with all smart devices, smartwatches, things like that?
Yeah. Not right now, but we are right now applying for a new clinical trial where we will add wearable to see how a wearable can work with the product. And I think wearable is really good because we want to have as low barrier as possible to get high compliance in the product and actually get people to log. However, it is important that the basic of the product, that we utilize the acceptance commitment therapy methodology and so forth, there is a real need for the patient to think about their specific situation. So you shouldn't just log and then think that you're done with the day. You should actually reflect upon your day and do the analysis yourself on what are your pain triggers, and therefore it's good to actually go into the app and not just let the app watch do it for you.
Yeah. Is it difficult to get patients to subscribe to this? I mean, getting patients to use your device, the app?
Well, as a B2C product, there is quite some hurdle to actually get folk to log on or onboard. But when you provide it in a clinical setting, that you actually have a physician telling you that you should use this as part of your treatment plan, then it's obviously easier. And then how to get compliance, we can see that we need to get the patient to be active the first 2-3 days. Because if they are that and they understand, then they are more prone to continue.
And now jumping into marketing, what is your marketing strategy for the product?
Well, I mean, our go-to-market model is to meet healthcare providers within the US and Sweden to offer the product to them as a remote monitoring device that they can provide to their patients. In terms of how we will market the product to reach those, I would say since we're a small company, we can't go broad in our marketing sense. So different fairs, events, conventions, trying to find distributors, try to bootstrap as much as we can to actually get out in the market without placing a number of ads and billboards.
And someone here is asking, how much sales do you need to reach break even?
I mean, it depends a bit on the size of the clinics that we sell to, and also the how long cash flow cycle we have. But I would say we need around 20 clinics, 15 to 20 clinics.
Okay. And final question, what classification is your app, and how has your journey to commercialization been affected by MDR?
We are a Class 1 medical device, both from an MDR regulation perspective as well as the FDA. And I mean, obviously, from MDD to MDR, there were some discussions in terms to understand how we can actually position it as a class 1 device. I think one key important thing here is that we are not treatment. We are a tool for the clinician for their treatment. So we are not the treatment to say we are a tool for providing that aid for a clinician. So that's one of the triggers that places us in the class 1.
Well, thank you so much, Eric, and looking forward to following you. Yep. Definitely. Next up, we have. Next up, we have the CEO of Cyxone, Carl Magnus Högekorp. Welcome, Carl.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Happy to be here today to present Cyxone. So Cyxone is a public company listed on Nasdaq First North under the ticker Cyxone. I just want to remind you about this forward-looking statement disclaimer. Cyxone was listed back in 2016, and we are developing a couple of drugs in the autoimmune space with the aspirations of transforming these indications. So we have a small molecule called Rebexamod, which is indicated for rheumatoid arthritis, and then we have another molecule based on a peptide called T20K, which we developed in multiple sclerosis. We have developed these molecules to different stages. Rebexamod is in phase 2 development. It has completed a phase 2A study, and I will come back to that. And the T20K project has been through a first-in-human study, and we are now back into preclinical activities to explore T20K in a combination with a kappa opioid receptor agonist. For the continuation of this presentation, I will focus on Rebexamod, which is our lead asset. And our story now is around a new value proposition. We have, during the summer, reassessed the market and what has recently happened on the market, and come up with a new strategy for Rebexamod. So a number of points that are very important for the development of drugs in this space is to look at what's happening here. So lately we have had the development for the JAK inhibitors that have received regulatory restrictions. We have also the development when it comes to the TNF-alpha inhibitors that have reached or are meeting strong competition from quite a number of biosimilars, especially on the US market. And what we see is that there is a lack of treatment options for individuals that are treated with TNF-alpha inhibitors. And that's a space where we see an opportunity to place Rebexamod. What we have demonstrated so far is that we have clinical effect in 225 patients with severe rheumatoid arthritis. So we're quite confident into moving into this patient segment that do not respond to TNF inhibitors. We have a very favorable safety profile collected from almost 300 patients. And we see that we can add value to the current standard of care. So when it comes to this patient segment that do not adequately respond to TNF blockers, there's quite a number of them actually. So up to 30 to 50% that do not adequately meet their treatment objectives with the TNF blockers and therefore need to be switched to something else. And what we see with Rebexamod is that we can provide an adjunct therapy to the TNF blockers. So just a couple of slides here on rheumatoid arthritis. It's a chronic disease, of course, causing joint pain and deformities of the joints. It requires lifelong treatment. But as I mentioned, many patients do not benefit from the first-line treatment and needs to be switched to a second-line treatment. And there we see also quite a number of patients that do not benefit. There is a need for new oral medications that provides much more freedom to individuals. Current TNF blockers are injectables. People need to come back to the hospital to get these injections. And so it's important to make sure that we can maintain treatment over the course of the disease as it develops. One aspect here is to come in quite early and mitigate the effects of macrophages. So macrophages is a cell type that establish themselves quite early in the disease course. They will continue together with T cells to drive the disease over time. We're working with Martin Kron as our medical advisor. He is a rheumatologist, and back in 2001, when they started to work with macrophages and exploring the effect of macrophages in rheumatoid arthritis, they discovered that we need to reduce the number of macrophages in the joint in order to treat these patients. And just to give you an image here of what is happening in the joint of a rheumatoid arthritis patient, it's a very complex system where you have a number of the players in the immune system playing a part. But one of the central parts, as I mentioned, and from a very early stage in the disease, is the macrophage. Even though it's been known for quite a number of years that macrophages are very important in driving disease, there are no treatments out there that actually target macrophages. And that's where we see Rebexmod come in. It is very selectively impacting of the macrophage function, but it's also impacting of the macrophage establishment. So that's a very unique property to Rebexmod. We have demonstrated this in clinical trials. So this is a 225 patient study in severe rheumatoid arthritis. And with our 50 milligram dose, we see that we're providing a clinical benefit to this patient from week 8 to week 12. And then we stop the treatment at week 12, and we see a sustained improvement of patients over the next 4 weeks, which is quite unique. And it's really built on this, that we continue this development in a different patient population, and we're quite confident moving into a new patient population where there's little treatment opportunities today. So moving on to the business case, of course, Rebexmod is moving into quite established market. We have Humira as the best-selling drug, selling for $20 billion per year. Humira is indicated in 16 different indications, but one of the main indication, of course, is rheumatoid arthritis. So it's a well-established market with a number of molecules. But we see the launch of biosimilars to Humira that happened this year in the US, which will greatly impact on this market. You will, if we look into the treatment course here, we will see that patients that go on the first-line treatment will quickly switch into a combination of methotrexate and TNF-alpha blockers, Humira. But after a while, these patients stop meeting their treatment objectives with Humira and other TNF blockers, and therefore they need something else. That's where we now position Rebexmod, and we see that as a great opportunity. We see that this would function as an adjunct therapy to the combination of methotrexate and TNF blockers. And it's also very much backed by key opinion leaders that we're talking to, both in the US and in Europe. So what we aim to do now is to investigate this in small studies, so 20, 30 patients, proof of concept studies. We are currently setting up these activities with key opinion leaders in Europe. One of the triggers for this strategic change was that we also have a new patent for Rebexmod. The original patent is lapsing in 2028, and we have, of course, completed that with a number of other supplementary patents to that. But we have a new composition matter patent that was granted in the US, and that will give us a patent lifetime to 2042. So in summary, rebexamod is a molecule with novel mode of action that is targeting central disease drivers. We have documented phase 2 efficacy and safety, and we have a convenient, non-injectable oral administration, very important. Established market, favorable partnership opportunities, and a very strong patent portfolio. Just briefly here, we are targeting macrophages. This is a busy slide. But in the middle here is the macrophage, indicating that we also have an opportunity to move into a number of other indications within the autoimmunity, autoinflammatory continuum. 150 different indications within this space. So they're very excited about also exploring other indications. So, and just briefly here at the end, we do have announced a rights issue coming up. We have secured 20 million SEK in that rights issue, but of course would be happy to see new shareholders coming in. So, and here are the arguments that I've already touched on, why we see this as a very interesting opportunity. So I'm happy to take some questions. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation, Carl Magnus. So questions are rolling in here. Could you talk a little bit about the feedback you've gotten from clinicians on the results that you've seen so far with rebexamod?
Yeah, we have a very exciting process right now where we're reaching out to key opinion leaders in Europe. We have, during the summer, also talked to a number of them in the US. And we do see a lot of enthusiasm around this molecule because they see the opportunity to actually add it on to the mix of methotrexate, TNF alpha blockers, and then they can put or rebexamod on top of that. So that's a very unique opportunity to rebexamod. We also see that there's a strong interest in the mechanism of rebexamod targeting macrophages because it's been recognized for over 20 years now that macrophages are driving this, and they try to deal with that with TNF alpha blockers. So TNF alpha is a molecule that is released by macrophages, but macrophages are doing so much more. So if you can impact on the macrophage more directly, they see that this could be a very interesting approach of treating RA.
Someone here is saying the clinical effects seem to be correlated with the dose. Higher is better. So do side effects exist, or does that inhibit a higher dose for patients?
Yeah, so when it comes to rebexamod, we've actually seen that the higher dose is not necessarily better. So we have decided to move forward with the 15 milligram, and this is based on the phase 2A study. And we see that mostly due to the fact that we do have better effect with that dose. When it comes to tolerability, we have tested rebexamod up to 100 milligrams, so we have quite a span up to where we see tolerability issues. So we're quite confident move forward with 50 milligram in this. Of course, we would also like to explore a slightly higher dose, but we'll see whether that opportunity arises in these trials.
And do you have a biomarker strategy in addition to TNF alpha blockers, TNF alpha blocker non-responders, to select a patient most likely to benefit from your drug?
Yes, it's very relevant to build in biomarkers, of course. And this is also a very central question for the upcoming proof of concept activities that we are running. So as we are interacting with these KOLs, they also have a very strong interest in exploring those translational activities. So we see that together with them, we can actually find relevant biomarkers that could be utilized together with rebexamod.
Will you be able to use these important data from these studies in upcoming studies?
Indeed, we are. utilizing the data that we have collected to great extent as we now are designing our new studies.
And in terms of the primary endpoints, what are the primary endpoints for the phase 2 study with Rebexamod?
So the primary endpoints that you typically explore when you go into phase 2 studies, more sort of regulated phase 2 studies, are based on the DAS28 score, where you assess 28 different joints in the body. But in these exploratory studies that we are now aiming to do, we will be looking at so many other different signals. So biomarkers, for instance, is one of the important ones.
Well, thank you so much for answering the questions and for your presentation, Carl Magnus.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
And next is the CEO of Lipigon, Stefan Nilsson. Welcome, Stefan.
Thank you. Thank you, and good to see a full auditorium. Happy to be here. Lipigon is a lipid biology specialist company, and lipids, that's another word for fats. So fat is our business. And I'm going to talk most about our clinical stage asset, Lipisense. So cardiometabolic disease, and that involves type 2 diabetes, atherosclerosis, stroke, heart attack, is the #1 killer in the world. It's not cancer, it's CVD. And although we reach the treatment goals, we can only hinder about 1/3 of all the cases. So there's a definitely need for novel treatments in this field. Triglycerides is what we are aiming at with Lipisense, and here we have no good options. The market is huge. Dyslipidemia is, if you reach 2% of the treatable patients, it's a $14 billion market. I'm going to talk to you about science behind and also the development. Science is strong. ANGPTL4, our target, is very well validated in human genetic studies, but also in preclinical models of disease, basically confirming what we see in human genetic studies. And we have the credibility to work on this target and work with this target. We're alone with ANGPTL4, but we have 50 years of research backing it up. And development of Lipisense is quite interesting in several aspects, because we can target a group of patients, which enables us to reach market approval with less than 1,000 patients. And while doing this, we would prove the proof of concept and open up for larger studies confirming the use of Lipisense in atherosclerosis and cardiovascular disease, thus keeping our development costs to minimum, while still having the opportunity to also go for the huge cardiovascular market. So, as I said, we have a long experience in the research of lipid transport. The team has been working along within Lipigon. We are experienced in both pharmaceutical development and business development. Since 2021, we've been listed at First North, and we since then made the transition from being a preclinical stage company to a clinical stage company. We have quite a nice list of current and previous collaboration partners validating the knowledge in Lipigon and what we're doing. Some recent achievements is that we just struck a regional deal with Liderna, Chinese company, for the area of Greater China. This is yet another external validation of Lipisense. It's the possibility to share development costs with Liderna in the future clinical development. And of course, it's a cash injection as well as a possibility to have future development milestones. We just had our US first patent approved in the US for the use of Lipisense in cardiometabolic disease. And during the last 3-4 months, we had a lot of prestigious presentations of ANGPTL4 and Lipisense. And we got a lot of attention from the scientific community on this. We're a portfolio company, so we have several programs in our portfolio. Quickly about the other three. So the program number 2, lipodystrophy, is out-licensed to Combigene. So here's Combigene's in the driver's seat here. They take all the costs and they are doing the development as we speak. Program 3, our dyslipidemia program, using small molecules to activate lipoprotein lipase, similar pathway within the same pathway as Lipisense. Thus, the potential and the treatment is huge also here. Basically, it's a small molecule is something that you could take orally as a pill. And this would, of course, be a huge benefit for if we would be able to bring this program into market. Here we are collaborating with HitGen, also a Chinese company, also linked to Liderna. And our program number 4 is a lung damage project. ANGPTL4, our target protein in Lipisense, is also involved in lung damage. This was sort of a serendipity that we discovered during the COVID period. But basically, ANGPTL4 is involved in inflammation, regardless of the cause of lung injury, so viral infection, bacterial infection, or even chemical damage to the lung. ANGPTL4 is highly upregulated, and thus, if you can inhibit that, you can improve recovery from different lung diseases. We are working with fully optimized compounds here. So basically what we need to do is to do a few additional tests, and then we can nominate a candidate drug that then could progress into clinic and preclinical safety. Something that we hope we could do this year. The coming year. So back to Lipisense. So there's a huge need for Lipisense. There are no good triglyceride-lowering drugs available. And triglyceride counts for a large proportion of the risk for cardiovascular disease that we can't reach with current treatments. Elevated plasma triglycerides basically can be divided into just hypertriglyceridemia, elevated levels, or severe hypertriglyceridemia. Both of them are involved in atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease. That's the abbreviation to the left. Whereas severe hypertriglyceridemia also is a risk factor for acute pancreatitis. There are no treatment options, and very few patients are treated with the options that are available. And the reason is that they are not good enough. They haven't shown clinical benefit, and they are also linked to adverse effects that makes the patient not comply with the medication. So for severe hypertriglyceridemia, which is our first indication, these are patients with over 500 milligrams of triglyceride per deciliter. They have a high risk for acute pancreatitis, a very painful and potentially life-threatening disease. Here it's enough to show that you can lower triglycerides in order to reach approval. And even though this is a small market compared to the cardiovascular market, it's still a billion-dollar market opportunity. Reaching just 5% of the treatable patients, you will have sales of $1 billion. And the good thing for a small company like us is that we could reach this with less than 1,000 patients in all the clinical trials. Once this has been done, we can look into the second indication, which is cardiovascular risk reduction. And this is a huge market with over 135 million patients in the 7 major markets. Of course, you would need huge phase 3 studies in order to prove the treatment effects. But this is where big pharma comes in, because if we can show the proof of concept in the smaller indication, they would bite on the larger indication. Using human genetics, you can predict the effects of different genes on diseases. So for coronary artery disease and type 2 diabetes, you can see that ANGPTL4 is positioned to the left of the line indicating no effect. And you can also see that the confidence interval is way to the left, so it's significantly linked to both coronary artery disease and type 2 diabetes. And ANGPTL3 and ApoC3, these are our main competitors, and they don't have the strong genetic support that our target has. And with strong genetic support, you have 4 times higher probability to reach market approval. In animal models, we have shown that LipiSense improves blood lipids, weight gain, glucose handling, insulin resistance, liver triglycerides, and also that it reduces atherosclerotic plaques. All these data are published. They are presented or submitted for peer review. So these are high quality data that we have produced alone or together with collaboration partners. In our phase 1 study, we've shown that LipiSense is safe and also that we have target engagement. So already now we have a substantial de-risking of the LipiSense program. All multiple doses show that we had lower plasma ANGPTL4 protein, and we are now doing advanced statistics and exploratory lipid analysis on the phase 1 data. So we hope that we could shed some more light on this in the near future. The upcoming phase 2 will focus on severe hypertriglyceridemia. About 25 patients. It's a very cost-effective study where we are using material that we have left over from phase 1. It will be performed in Sweden at 3 or 4 centers and start this winter and end within next year. So this is a major opportunity for us to create value in short time, and also for us to meet the requirements or the wish list of big pharma in a very, very effective or relevant patient cohort. Some upcoming milestones, of course, we're going to file to Läkemedelsverket or Swedish medical authorities soon. Hopefully within 60 to 100 days, get the approval, the final report of phase 1, as I just mentioned, and then start phase 2 during next year. And of course, there are the possibilities to have milestone payments from Moderna, additional cash injections, and much more within the other programs. So with that, I would like to just conclude that we have a very good opportunity to build company value in both short and long term. And the idea here is that we will, with this focused and very small phase 2 study, put us in the best possible position for a global deal in the near future.
Thank you so much, Stefan, for the presentation. What is the general interest in the lipid business among big pharma?
Well, it's CVD is the major killer in the world, and as I said, we just with current treatments, and even if we meet the treatment goals, it's just 1/3 of all the cases that we can stop. So it's a huge interest. It's the biggest cost for healthcare in Europe and in the US. So from all perspectives, it's a very, very hot market, and it's been hot for a long time, and it continues to be like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, you mentioned some of the current treatments out there for cardiovascular disease. How are your products different, especially in terms of reducing other cardiovascular disease markers and not only triglycerides?
Well, we have the possibility to have all these benefits or add-ons that the others products in market or in development do not have. Most of the key population for severe HTD is type 2 diabetics. They are probably 70% of all people with SHTG are type 2 diabetics as well. And if you then also can improve glucose handling or insulin sensitivity, that's definitely a drug that I, as a doctor, would give to my patients. There's nothing like that.
And we have a question here about the phase 2A timeline with Lipisense.
Phase 2 only. It's not the phase 2A. Yep.
Thank you for that. And are you looking to sell the project?
We are definitely looking for possibilities to out-license. We already did the regional deal with Moderna. And of course, a global deal is definitely something that we would be aiming for. But it's up to Big Pharma to bite on this. But as it is right now, we are having discussions with most of the companies that are involved in this space. So they have their eyes on us, and it's just waiting for the right data now.
Well, thank you so much for answering the questions and for your presentation, Stefan.
Thank you.